Tapping in.
Are we live?
Indeed. Without further ado, we have our good friend Korneel, who is the co-founder of Footprint Positive, joining us. Mr. Korneel, it's such a pleasure to have you here, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm all right. Thank you for having me. I love what you guys are doing here. I'd love to be part of it.
Well, we appreciate you being here, man. Yes, claps and snaps for our man, Footprint Positive. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Footprint Positive is, basically a simple way, a affordable way for people in the UK, for companies in the UK to offset their specific vehicle by planting trees. Simple as that. We base it on specific vehicle. We base it on personal mileage. So we make it personalized to people. It's a subscription model. So we make it as affordable as possible. We charge on a monthly basis. We aim for, you can either choose an 8, 10 or 15-year plan. Basically, we make you carbon neutral, or your car, at least your vehicle, over that time.
So one of the things that we've been able to cover on this show, which has been bubbling up, is the fact that indeed people are increasingly getting more upset about the carbon emissions that their cars produce. So one of the cool things that we found about Footprint Positive, which is also why we were so excited to bring you onto the show, is to be able to discuss some of the cool, innovative ways that entrepreneurs are bringing the solution in order to solve what we know as the carbon emissions issues that are happening with cars. So when you speak of things such as carbon offsetting, what exactly is carbon offsetting, and how does one get to participate in that?
So, it's kind of wormed your opening there. Carbon offsetting, the simple idea behind it is basically there's CO2 emissions that cars produce, that engine produce, all kinds of things produce. They're bad for the environment. They contribute to global warming, those kind of things. So basically the idea of carbon offset is you counter that. So everything you produce, everything you emit, you offset by planting trees. Trees absorb CO2, produce oxygen. So basically it's that idea. I think, personally, I hope that companies like ours, that initiatives like ours, won't be here in 10 years' time. Because it generally is a necessary but a very temporary solution. The solution is not planting trees and keep emitting, keep polluting. The solution is net zero. The solution is clean transport, clean energy, those kind of things. So I'm generally hopeful that we don't have to run this for the next 10 years. We will. I know we will, because we will not get there in 10 years' time. But yeah, it's a necessary thing because global warming is happening. I hope we can start the conversation there. It is happening, but what can we do until we get there? What can we do in the meantime?
That's super real.
Something's necessary. Something needs to be done in the meantime. You can't just keep waiting.
I really resonate with your point about, like, you hope, trying to work yourself out of a job, right? I feel like a lot of us who are trying to adjust social challenges and social issues are trying to work ourselves out of the job. And so to be able to commit yourself and invest your time and energy and effort into something like that, I can hear your passion in it, even in how you discuss it. So were you always an environmentally conscious person, or was there a turning point for you? Was it a documentary that you saw that really?
A YouTube video at the very least.
No, I don't think so. I don't consider myself to be an environmentalist still. to this day. I am not somebody who will, tie myself to a tree to stop it from being chopped down. That's the image I get when you say environmentalist. I'm somebody who, I personally believe that sometimes a solution just needs to be simple, accessible, and affordable for people to want to contribute to it. And that's what we've tried to do with this. When I came up with the idea, I think it was about 2 years ago, at the beginning of the very first lockdown, the COVID lockdowns. That was the easy bit. Came up with the idea of, if it was accessible, if it was affordable, I'd do this. And so I made the assumption that every person with a good idea always makes this. If I do it, somebody else would do it as well. And so started looking at what's out there at the moment, and found a number of solutions, a number of similar things to what Footprint does, but with two big differences. That first one being kind of personalized offsetting, which for me was a big thing. So pretty much all the solutions out there at the moment will work on an average basis. So the average person lives like this or drives like that. The average person emits this much CO2. So therefore, we suggest you plant X amount of trees every month or every year or whatever to offset your emissions. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I don't even look at those organizations as quote unquote competitors because basically we're all working towards the same thing.
Yeah.
We're not in a race. We're not competing to save the world from CO2. We're working together, if anything. But the thing I struggle with these kind of solutions is that they always benefit, like so many things, the people who live or have almost the luxury of living above average. So people who don't drive a lot, or people who drive a car with a small engine that doesn't emit as much, those people shouldn't be punished for wanting to offset their emissions by having to pay the average more than what it should cost them, because there's people out there who drive more or have a bigger car, that kind of thing. And so it's that kind of thing of, we need to make this personalized. So as Footprint Positive, we take your personal mileage, your personal car into account to give you your price, not just an average price that works for everyone, whether rich or the bigger cars benefit from the smaller cars offsetting the same amount. The other thing I noticed is issue I kind of figured is the idea of live offsetting. I call it live offsetting. It's this thing where basically the solutions out there will claim that a tree absorbs, let's say, 1 million grams of CO2 over its lifetime, which is a decent calculation. But what they don't say in that same sentence is that it will basically take 40, 50, 60 years from now before that has actually happened.
Right.
If you plant a tree today, can you really say that you've offset 1 million grams of CO2 from your lifestyle? I personally don't think so, because in 2070, you can say that the tree you planted today will have offset that. So that's the second part where I wanted to make sure that we make Footprint Positive different, is we've built into the calculations the time it takes for a tree to grow to maturity. If you plant a tree today, it won't absorb the same amount as it will next year, as it will in 5 years, as it will in 10 years, until it's fully grown. So what we want to do is we aim to get people's cars carbon neutral in either 8, 10 or 15 years, depending on the plan they choose. What we don't say is, if you emit, let's say, 1 million grams, to keep it simple, 1 million grams of CO2 per year, you need to plant one tree. And that's it for the year, because a tree absorbs 1 million grams.
Yeah, you're asking too much of that baby tree.
Yeah, it's not happening. That's not reality. What we do say is that through the subscription that you choose, we'll plant trees every month based on their growth rate and the number of trees that you're planting that we've calculated. All of those trees together will absorb, let's say in 10 years, you've taken a 10-year plan, will absorb what your car emits in that year. Now, obviously, on top of that, because the trees you plant, let's say in year 9, are this big, they will continue to grow. And over time, in the next, usually somewhere in the next 5 to 7, 8 years, you will also offset your historic emissions. But that for me is one of the bigger things, is that idea of live offsetting. You're not offsetting 1 million grams of CO2 for every tree that you plant. Because first of all, not all the trees will survive that long in the first place.
I appreciate that approach.
You see I'm smiling, Miles. You see I'm smiling with the live offsetting part and the personalized scoring part, because that speaks near and dear to some of the work that we do and we champion, which is that the more you empower people with actual tangible information about about what their contribution towards, be it pollution in this instance, is, it allows the consumer to be a lot more conscious, which is what we're seeing growing up. So in the same way that we understand that a lot of the plastic, the plastic pollution that's happening is not actually from people, it's from corporate organizations and from sea nets that are left out, but people don't necessarily understand that. So we've thrown away plastic straws, which are bad, yes, but that's not the main contributor. So when you speak about personalized scores and live offsetting, that really is then putting back into the consumer the power to actually know, like, okay, cool, I know what I'm offsetting, I know what my impact is. My question to you, as somebody who's so passionate about a better tomorrow, is what does Korneel and the Footprint Positives view on a better tomorrow actually look like?
It's a good question. What does a better tomorrow look like? I think for me, that when you say tomorrow, I mean tomorrow. I don't mean next year. And I think when we're talking about global warming, environmental crisis, all of those kind of buzzwords, I think that's one of almost the marketing mistakes that we've been making, that scientists have been making. We keep talking about by 2050, this will happen. By 2100, this will happen. That's 30 years away. We don't receive any type of urgency with that. I would love for people to start focusing on, right, this is where we were 5 years ago. We were getting, this was the average temperature, this was sea level, these were the amount of storms that we had, these were the amount of forest fires that we had that weren't created by space lasers. This is where we are today compared to that. And based on our progress, this is where we'll be next year. People are complaining about the number of storms we've been getting in the UK here for the last year. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about, unless something happens, there'll be one more next year. There'll be 2 more in 2 years. There'll be 5 more in 5 years. Let's make it practical. Let's talk about tomorrow. Like you say, let's talk about that. If every year we improve 1%, in 20 years, we'll have improved 20%. It's that idea of those small incremental changes. If we can guarantee that tomorrow is better, then the day after tomorrow will be again better and better and better, and will increase, rather than talking about a distant future where we seem to be having this arrogance, I would call it, of, we can just keep going at full speed and pull the handbrake at the very last minute, as if society is, as if the world is in some kind of action movie where we'll stop just a millimeter from the line where things go wrong. It's like we're expecting our future selves in 2049 to suddenly come up with the solution, but that's just not how it works. We need to get better tomorrow for the day after tomorrow to be better as well.
I love the way you just explained that. Like the action movie of, like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Everybody's like, oh yeah, we'll just have some Bruce Willis type figure. We'll step in at the end and make sure that the asteroid or the ozone, is defeated by most likely America. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's this fantasy that we've created. And I really like how you guys have looked at, because to keep it 100%, it would be sexier to say, right? Like, we plant this tree, your car is now carbon neutral,
Yep.
right? Or carbon negative. But I appreciate the honesty and the approach that you guys have taken. And there's also something I noticed kind of when I was going through your website is that you also offer the opportunity for folks to use your logo.
Yep.
And that seems like it's kind of a community building effort, an effort to like create something that's recognizable. So tell us a little bit more about the thinking beyond that.
So the thinking there very much comes from, I think, almost consumer demand, right? Is people start demanding more of this kind of stuff. This is a completely different example, but walk into any coffee chain here in the UK and somewhere, somehow you'll find a sign or a board talking about how their products are ethically sourced, or how they're supporting the coffee farmers, or how they're supporting local communities, that kind of thing. I don't think that's because the board of Starbucks is sat in their top floor conference room feeling guilty about their lifestyle. I think it's simply part of their strategy of, let's create an experience, let's create brand loyalty by making people feel like they're doing something good. And that's the way, in my opinion, Starbucks can overcharge for very average coffee. And so it's based on that idea of people want it, people want to be seen to be doing something. So if us allowing somebody to put our logo in their email signature helps them make a decision to plant trees, then you go for it. Absolutely, let's do that. If it makes you look better, all for it. Plus, at the same time, in terms of marketing strategy, somebody wants to boast about the fact that they're planting trees by sharing our logo, by sharing our website. I'm not going to say no to that.
There you go.
That's how communities are built, is through the sharing of information, through the opening of information, which is why being able to even do something as simple as saying, you guys can use our logo, and that brings a sort of awareness, which, that's not always, that people aren't always privy to that privilege. And I think something like that might go over people's heads in terms of how actually valuable it is to be able to do that. If you tried to do something else, you'd have to pay for it. Like you said, we saw the same thing with non-GMOs and GMO-free labelings that were put onto foods and whatnot. That actually, turns out it's just a purchased propaganda, if you will. So, say I am a UK driver and I'm ready to offset my carbon footprints, and I want to do some carbon offsetting to be carbon neutral, and I'm behind the cause. What steps do I take to be to go through the footprint positive road?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I've said, we've really focused on making it easy, making it accessible and affordable. So basically, all you do is you go to footprintpositive.com, footprint-positive.com. You scroll down to our calculator, you enter in your number plate, you enter in your annual mileage. Our system will look up your specific car. We'll give you 3 options: 8 years, 10 years, 15 years. Obviously, 8 years is the more expensive one, 15 years time is the cheaper one. And you just click subscribe. Done deal. That's it. It's simple as that.
Well, you heard it here first on the All the Way Live podcast, man. Go wherever you are, go follow at @footprint_positive. Make sure that you are following everything that's going to happen, because this is only going to get bigger. And if you're in the UK, go ahead and put your license in there. Start offsetting right now.
Right now. And Mr. Korneel, as a friend, I want to definitely thank you for making the time as a visionary, as I like to see you in your own lights. I'd like to thank you for your contribution towards making this world a better place, man. I think the work you guys are doing is super important at Footprint Positive. I think it's tangible. I think it's relatable. We like to, we created this platform to be able to highlight people like yourself that are doing that type of work, entrepreneurs, people that are really looking to make a difference. If you could give, because me and you share love of statistics and numbers, if you could give either a quote or a phrase or a book that you're reading right now as an entrepreneur, what what would you impart on somebody on a similar journey to help them down the path?
Whew. So many quotes, so many books out there. I think at the moment I'm reading 2 books. One is called Grit, which basically talks about the idea of talent versus generally grit, effort. Love the book. Best predictor of people's success is grit, is not talent. Simple as that. The other one I'm reading is The Power of Onlyness, which focuses on the idea that you, because of your specific experience, because of your life experiences, because of your background, your makeup, your way of thinking, are able to come up with ways that nobody else in the world can come up with solutions that nobody else in the world can come up with. Whether that's a global problem, whether that's a specific problem in your company, in your life, there are things that you are necessary for, that you are needed for, and bringing that out, finding people to come alongside with you. 2 fantastic books. Read them.
Wow. I'm gonna check that. I'm gonna check that last one out for sure. Because I love that. I love that idea on an individual level and on a collective level, right? I'm a big believer in the idea that when a few people are in a room, there's something that only those people together can accomplish.
Yeah.
And I think we've done accomplished that here today, man. We appreciate
It's a point.
Definitely. Listen, Korneel, we have a long show to give these people. You have set us off on the right direction. You have kicked off the fireworks for us on this show, man. We want to thank you for joining us, and with our producer's permission, move on to the next segment of this show.
Thanks for having me both. Love what you're doing. Keep it going.
Gratitude.
Thanks, brother.